did not get covered, or at least did not get covered as much as it should have in the big speech last night. There were several topics that certainly seemed like they were worth addressing at least once a year, and yet were not discussed much. The first is Obamacare. Now, he did briefly mention that more people have insurance than did in previous years, which is certainly true, and yet he spoke very little about a program that has overall done far better than many expected. And I don't just mean better than Republicans expected, it's done better than Democrats expected. Many Democrats were worried after the passage of the bill that it would not do enough to control the price of insurance. I still hold those fears, and yet insurance premiums are lower than they were a year ago. And considering the rate at which they've been rising, that is impressive and probably worth mentioning. Now, he did mention one program, the Precision Medicine Initiative, to bring us closer to curing diseases like cancer and diabetes. That sounds good. Those are horrific diseases. And yet, I don't think he took enough credit for that significant piece of legislation.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of shocked that he didn't talk more about Obamacare. I guess it's in already, right? So the debate is basically over. We'll see how it works out. But I did think he was going to say a little bit more. The funny thing, that line there that he said about cancer and diabetes, they always do that where they say something really, you just say a couple buzzwords. Next, we're going to take care of cancer. That's really on the docket. That would be nice. We shall see. But he did leave off a couple other things that I think were even more interesting than Obama.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting is I hope that he didn't feel he needed to focus on it for what you sort of implied there, that, the debate's largely over. I don't think the Democrats feel like they need to defend it very much. And yet, in the Republican response, which we'll get to a little bit later on, Joni Ernst did call it the failed policy of Obamacare. So she at least hasn't gotten the message, even if other Republicans have.
The big thing I think he left off the speech, John, is that what we're doing now?
Yeah, for sure.
It was, I mentioned it last night during the show when we were live doing it, whatever you call that, live commenting. He didn't talk about how Republicans are trying to screw over Social Security.
Yeah.
Right, with the latest thing of their accounting trick or their rules trick where they're not going to shift money into the disability portion of Social Security, which will cause a crisis starting in 2016.
Yeah.
He didn't even bring that up. That's a perfect time for him to frame the issue. So now that when we discuss it going forward, we're discussing it using Barack Obama's framing. Instead, he didn't do that. And that's a big problem. That's why conservatives, even though all their ideas are bad and American people aren't on board for any of them, when you poll them, Americans are liberal about everything, right? When the reason why the Republicans are so able to get their policies instituted is because they're better at framing, they're better at messaging. And last night's speech was the perfect example of that. He didn't take credit for Obamacare. He didn't point out, again, he did that thing about we need to work together. Instead of outlining it, no, we're different. Here's what I'm for. Here's what they're for. Here's what I've been trying to do. Here's what they've been blocking. He still won't do it. He still does that bullshit of the people want us to work together. People don't give a shit who works together and who doesn't work together. You know what people care about? They care about if they can pay their mortgage, if they can see a doctor without going bankrupt, and if they can take a vacation, and if their job's not going to be outsourced, and if their kids can go to college. That's what people care about. They don't care. Oh, you know what? We didn't get any of that shit done, but they're working together. I'm so happy that they're working together. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Now, okay, a couple of things. One, I think he didn't mention Obamacare because out-of-pocket costs for people who have health insurance are soaring. So I think he probably figured, and looking at the polls, he's gained what he's going to get. This is my guess. He's gained what he's going to gain from it for now. Why bring it up? Social Security, even though he could have brought up some of the things you guys mentioned for sure. Social Security, Jimmy, that there's a very good chance he's on board with some of the stuff that Republicans are trying to do, and that's why he didn't bring it up. So he wants to give himself, at the same time that he wants to paint a grand vision of a more liberal America, he also wants to give himself the wiggle room to move on some of these issues where he's way closer to the Republicans than I think any of us would like to see him be. And I think that's part of the problem here.
Yeah, I think Jimmy's also right that Obama, what he's doing and what he's always done, and I think last night was a great example of it, is that he goes to our heart, not necessarily our brain. So the heart part of it is all this stuff about working together. And that was, especially the last 10 minutes, which were almost like a farewell speech, it got so sappy, I thought. So he needs to go a little more to the brain. So when he says the things about the heart, like he talked a little bit for a second about campaign finance or something.
Yeah,
and it's like, money. And dark money and things like that. And it's like, you know what, but at the same time, if you know anything about Obama, and we've reported on a lot, but the mainstream media hasn't, is that he does go to these fundraisers all the time. So he kept saying
that's one of his big advantages as a candidate.
Right.
He raises money well.
Right. And he'll still do it. By the way, you know what I mean? Yeah. He doesn't have any more campaigns to go, as he said last night, but he's still going to do it. So it's a little disingenuous when he talks about the money and we don't want to fight and go to lunches and argue and blah, 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 when he's doing those same things. So he plays to this part of us that wants to sort of be better, while at the same time still playing both sides of the field in actuality.
And I have to say that I thought this, I agree with what you said, and I have to say also that in terms of trying to find an inspirational point or an inspirational tone, I thought, and John, you talked about it last night a little bit, the phrase middle-class economics was just a stiff, as far as I'm concerned. It's like saying, Southern accounting. You know, I mean, it's just not.
Southern accounting actually sounds.
Southern accounting is. I'm going to open that company, but you know, and I do a lot of economics writing it, but I've got to say, it's just not a sexy word.
Yeah,
middle class economics is not. It's almost like, can we pick something so bland that we can tell people, somehow communicate to people we're talking about them and helping them, trying to help them without actually getting them interested in what we're saying. It's almost like magically designed for boredom.
Right. Yeah.
Am I being unfair?
No, I mean, that's the point I tried to make last night. And I also saw, by the way, I believe it was on MSNBC. It might have been Fox. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to tell them apart in terms of the quality of their broadcasting. But they criticized him for not bringing up Social Security. But the way they did it, and it's sort of foreboding, was why didn't he address the entitlement crisis? He didn't talk about that. They're trying to prod him back into exactly what you're worried about. And all the stuff about working together. I've only been reporting on the news, I guess, for a couple of years, but every time I've seen them work together, that's been the scariest time in terms of reporting. I don't want to see them working that closely together.
Yes. And two more quick things. One is, of course, he did mention fast-tracking the TPP trade deal, which would be devastating. So the one thing he mentioned that he can get done is the horrible thing. All the things he mentioned he can't get done were the good things. That's number one. And number two, he said some weird things about corporate tax reform that could have been taken either way. We mentioned it last night. Today, Treasury Secretary Lew said he wants to close loopholes but lower the corporate tax rate by 8 points. So
that was what I was worried about. Yeah.
Now we see that he may have a new tone, but it feels a lot like the same guy we've been seeing for 6 years.
Right. I'm feeling those loopholes are not going to get closed, but they will drop the rate for 8 points.
Yeah.
That's how these things usually play out.
Which is a joke in a country when some of the most profitable corporations pay single-digit or, in some cases, negative income tax rates. They actually get more money back from the government. Yeah, we need to cut their rates a little bit. That's what's stifling job creation.
But also, there were a lot of those inconsistencies, and I'm sure we could think of 10 more. But another one, for example, was what he talked about Gitmo. I mean, he ran the first time in 2008 when he ran. He ran in 2007 on closing Gitmo. Guess who's been the president for the last 6 years?
Is it Ted Cruz?
No, the guy that was giving the speech last night, Obama. So there were a lot of those inconsistencies where his rhetoric goes to the things that we all want. And I think that's your point. It goes to the things that most Americans want. And then what he actually does is a separate thing altogether.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can say certain things in your first big speech as an incoming senator that you can't really say and get away with when you've been president since as long as there have been iPhones. Basically, maybe you should have gotten something done in that time.
Oh wait, can I just throw in one more, because I thought the foreign policy stuff was the worst of what happened last night. But he said we're pushing back ISIL. Joe Biden this morning said we're losing ground to ISIL, and then accidentally, I think, much like he did with gay marriage, said we're going to need boots on the ground. So that was this morning Joe Biden said that. So it's like, let's all get it. Like,
we need boots on the ground for gay marriage?
For gay marriage, I know, I worded that a little strangely.
I'm dating that guy.
That's just a night in West Hollywood. Boots on the ground. No. You like that one.
Gotta love my setups. Gotta love my setups.
So, but that kind of disconnect is what I'm talking about. Like, on one hand, he's saying
part of that is Biden's disconnect with reality,
and that totally could be true. But on one hand, he's saying we're stopping ISIL. Literally, the next, not even 24 hours later, the vice president is on there saying they're expanding. So, I don't know, which is right. I don't know.
Joe Biden knows what ISIL is. Interesting. I would not have bet on that. Also, by the way, there were a few very vague references to shootings, but considering the severity and how often they've been popping up. I mean, the fact that they barely got much of a mention, there was a little bit more about some of the strife between, like, the African-American community and the police. He mentioned that a little bit, but no proposals whatsoever in terms of gun control. So whatever possible momentum there has been from the tragedies we've experienced as a country, there will be nothing federally, at least. No push for it, nothing.
And again, the way he framed the issue of police brutality in America was, again, to try to have it both ways, be on both sides of the issue. It's like, hey, unarmed black men shouldn't be shot, but, cops should be able to come home every. And it's like, no one's saying cops shouldn't be able to come home. There's no one out there saying that. Mm-hmm. But there are police organizations out there saying, we do what we tell you, and if we shoot you, it's your fault. So that there isn't this bullshit of both sides there's some kind of a debate happening. There's no fucking debate happening. Yeah. There's an out-of-control police culture in America. We've seen evidence after evidence after evidence. There's no way to hold them accountable if we let it go to a grand jury or a district attorney. So that's the problem. The problem isn't cops getting shot by unarmed black people. You know what I mean? He's trying to make that there's some equal fucking problem happening, and there isn't an equal problem happening.
Okay, let me wrap this up with my part of it with one quick statement, which is I think that politicians like Barack Obama exist to define the leftmost limit of the political debate. Mm-hmm. And that the fact that he's moved a little more to the left means that people outside the political process have done their job of putting the heat on. And that this means it's still not where it needs to be to get the kinds of change we need. And to do that, we need to keep the pressure on. In other words, I see this more in a way as a victory for outside forces and for people like Elizabeth Warren within the system and all that than I do actually a shift in the president's own rhetoric. We got to accept that he's representing the push in the other direction. We got to keep him going this way.
I did find him when he said that stuff about Wall Street and Dodd-Frank and those guys. He mentioned that in the speech last night. He didn't mention the fact that he just signed on to a bill that gutted it.
Right, of course.
He's trying to pretend like he's doing the right thing when he's doing the exact opposite.
And Hillary tweeted that same comment the day before the State of the Union message, but if she had made 10 phone calls while that was being debated in the Senate, she could have turned this thing around.
Yes.
So he gave the nod to this deal that rolled back part of the contract, an important part, and she stayed silent, and now they're saying, as the election rolls up, the next election rolls up, we're for keeping strong protections on Wall Street. Well, then do something about it. That kind of proves the point.
Well, thankfully, at least there are some Senate Democrats who have been doing something about it. Like, that could have passed, I think, 2 weeks ago now. But it is coming back up, I believe this week, actually. I could be wrong about that, though. Okay, let's move on to a slightly different part of it. The State of the Union. For the most part, the president was both polite and calm to Republicans. He's a very conciliatory sort of man. And so he was, for the most part, when he stuck to his script, quite polite. But when he went off script, it got a little bit more contentious. Take a look at this clip.
I had no more campaigns to run. My only agenda, I know because I won both of them.
Looking off into the distance, smiling, and as you pointed out, the head turn really sold the joke. Probably our favorite moment, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Mine, for sure.
Republicans not as big fans.
This goes back to 2008, the Jay-Z thing in the primaries. This is like, he won 2 elections, and he is the first president since Dwight D. Eisenhower to win a majority of the popular vote. That's how historic. He's the first.
Twice, you mean?
Twice, excuse me. Yes, thank you for that. And he is the first, I believe, first Democrat since FDR to do it twice. So
first Muslim ever.
First socialist ever. First Kenyan ever. So
that's a lot of birds.
He's broken all these barriers. He should have owned that a little bit, man. I mean,
he did there, I think, at least.
He did.
He smiled. He didn't say, I'm sorry.
No. Look, that as stand-up comics, I mean, that was a pro move, what he did right there. He dealt with the crowd appropriately. He milked it for the laugh with the smile. That little breath that he took in he knew it. That's the best to him. And of course, Republicans are getting their panties in a bunch. That's what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have moments of humanity in this thing. And for a guy who came in on hope and change, and it was so exciting, and I said on my show this morning, in retrospect, it felt like we were all on drugs at that time, that rollout of Obama. And to see those little moments of that, because, well, that's what it felt like. Maybe I was on drugs at the time, but it
makes you remember.
It was like, that's that thing. Because the rest of it,
as we discussed in the previous segment, to me was just the standard stuff that we get at him. So those brief moments, and then because you also see the fight in him. You know what I mean? You also see that moment of
willing to be combative to some extent.
Yeah.
And the whining Republicans, it strikes me that the whining Republicans are whining about the fact that these rude jerks were
clapping that he's not
you don't
running
get to run anymore. You know, it's like,
he's combative.
It's like he's combative.
Right.
He's not polite. Well, that's a dick move.
Guess what? That's democracy. They clapped and he responded.
Yeah. Right. No, and I totally agree. Like, we have to remember that is perhaps the only line he himself wrote for the State of the Union, and it was our favorite. Maybe he should have written more. But yeah, there was more humanity and that little joke than the entirety of Joni Ernst's Republican response.
You know what he could have said there, which also would have worked and been even, is he when they started to applaud, he could have said, "Yeah, I know, which is good for you guys that I'm not going to run anymore."
Right. That should have been the track record after the first.
I know, I would. So that's good for you.
I wish they had gone to John McCain to see.
Yes!
But unfortunately, they chose not to. I have a feeling he probably sneered. So we do have a response from some Republicans who are not a fan of it. Understand that immediately all of the headlines about the State of the Union, that was the only thing most, especially in the right, wanted to cover. But here are some Republican politicians. Tom Cole, representative, says, probably not helpful when you rub the other guy's nose in the dirt a little bit. Look, he's allowed to take a victory lap, but he ought to be thinking about what works. He's not trying to be helpful to you.
No,
really not. Nor should he.
It was this guy's team that did the applause in the first place.
Exactly.
Right. So,
how helpful was that?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, we've got.
That's what. Yeah.
They can try to be helpful as well. Senator Ted Cruz says if the president sticks to the tone that he chose tonight, if he sticks to anger and defiance towards the American voters, then perhaps he will veto bill after bill after bill after bill, and then in the greatest case of projection ever. But if he chooses to embrace and revel in gridlock and obstructionism, then he will be an unfortunate choice that I hope he reconsiders.
Then he says, wait a minute, let me try that again. No, do I sense in that first sentence just a little tiny tad of angry black manism? Anger and defiance.
Yeah.
He's uppity too, I bet.
I just get a little bit of that vibe in the man.
Yeah, a little bit. Here's Senator Kelly Ayotte saying, an interesting throwaway. It was kind of like he got back in campaign mode and did that. And so that's all I make of it. Actually similar to how we responded.
Actually,
all right, we liked it.
Right. All right,
exactly.
fair enough.
My favorite response, though, was Patrick McHenry, who says, it's factually accurate. I don't know much about Patrick McHenry, but I like him a little bit more now for acknowledging that. Yes, and so I hope that after a day or two of either gloating on the side of us on the left or perhaps on the right being a little bit angry about that, we can return to a little bit of the substance, what little there was in the State of the Union. That would be nice. Okay, but he wasn't the only person to speak last night. The Republicans did too. For the Republican response to the State of the Union, they decided to shy away from many policy prescriptions and go a bit more towards the folksy. Here is Joni Ernst.
We felt them in Red Oak, the little town in southwestern Iowa where I grew up and am still proud to call home today. As a young girl, I plowed the fields of our family farm. I worked construction with my dad. To save for college, I worked the morning biscuit line at Hardee's. We were raised to live simply, not to waste. It was a lesson my mother taught me every rainy morning. You see, growing up, I had only one good pair of shoes. So on rainy school days, my mom would slip plastic bread bags over them to keep them dry. But I was never embarrassed, because the school bus would be filled with rows and rows of young Iowans with bread bags slipped over their feet.
Okay, now, first of all, demographically stupid, because most of this country no longer lives in rural, small town, farming areas. So demographically, that's pitched to an America that doesn't exist anymore, essentially. And by the way, is getting killed. That's a whole other conversation, how the Democrats could speak to the farming communities and all that. But so demographically, mistime. Secondly, animatronic. I mean, that's so right. I mean, it's just...
You see, when I was young, like, she can't even deliver the line. It's supposed to be like, you see, when I was young, like, Obama would have sold that line. It would have actually come across as folksy, perhaps. But, I listened really fast. I listened to the Opie and Anthony, or what's left of Opie and Anthony, every once in a while. And those guys are generally more on the right. And their entire morning broadcast was about how fake she was and how phony. And the main host said, when I was a kid, I put bags over my shoes, and I'm not even buying your little speech. It's not even connecting with me, and I did that.
Whose idea was it? Sorry, Jimmy. Whose idea was it to have the rebuttal be in a room alone?
They do it every year.
No, I know they do it every year.
Yeah.
Look, it could have been worse. It could have been Marco Rubio running out of spit.
It could have been Bobby Jindal coming out and doing his Kenny from the 30 Rock imitation.
Yeah.
That was the worst.
Yeah. So there's no shortage of how many bad ones there are. But there's something about the optics of standing alone in a room that I think make it seem more lonely. You're already the loser because you're giving the rebuttal. And somebody made a great point. I wish I could remember who said this on Twitter. But there's something about it that seems like a hostage video. Doesn't it seem like there's a gun right off camera, like, say this shit, and
Satan.
that's why she talks like a robot. It just doesn't feel right. Yeah. And also, a rebuttal technically you should be rebutting the things that were said in the speech. Now, I get it, the speech is released a couple hours earlier, but a rebuttal really should be written after the speech so you can truly, but I know that's not how anything really works.
Well, but you remember the part where Obama talked about the kind of bags he put on his shoes?
Exactly.
Well, we put bread bags.
And we wrapped prayer rugs around our feet as we walked up. Yeah. That was not a popular line, understandably.
If the GOP is able to successfully implement their policies, people won't be able to afford bags to put on their feet anymore. They won't be able to afford bread. And putting bags, a woman putting the right to put a bag on her feet is the one act of control over her body that Joni Ernst won't vote against.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Now, I'm glad that you brought up, though, that it seems structurally that this is made to produce awkward moments, that you're trying to show that you connect with the American people, but you're literally not even connecting with anyone in the room with you. So J.R. Jackson has cut a couple of the previous rebuttals, and you can see the pattern of how awkward it is. Here is Kathy McMorris-Rogers, at least as folksy as Joni Ernst.
I got a letter from Betty in Spokane. Here, no challenge is too great and no dream too big. Kathy, you need to save this money so you can go to college one day. But it wasn't long before I met Brian, a retired Navy commander, and now we have 3 beautiful children. We, the people, have been the foundation of America since her earliest days. If you would have told me as a little girl that I would one day put my hand on the Bible and be sworn in as the 200th woman to serve in the House of Representatives, I wouldn't have thought it possible. Always, always dream for more. And so I did. I saved, without $1 to our name. My dad drove a school bus, and my mom worked as a part-time bookkeeper. Whether you're a girl in Kettle Falls or a boy from Brooklyn, the true State of the Union lies in your heart and in your home.
To be fair, that video, however we mock it now, did create the political superstar that is Kathy McMorris.
No, but we criticized it at the time. It now seems it's marvelous. Give it the Oscar. It's so good in comparison to what we've seen lately.
And why do they think we care about their biographies anyway? I mean,
because we desperately want real people, so they have to at least give the old college try pretending that
not to mention Joni Ernst worked construction, and there are no construction jobs now, and if she gets her way, there never will be.
Not even in the Keystone Jobs bill?
I want to give my State of the Union response, right, to talk about my biography. It's like I grew up on the south side of Chicago where people beat the shit out of their kids. I was beating the shit out of all my friends were too, and we learned something, that you're going to get the shit beaten out of you.
Yeah, well,
is that real too?
Yeah, it just seems
they beat you bloody and put a bag over it.
It seems disingenuous. First off, that you have to play up this story of struggle. Now, everybody has struggled. Even people that are middle class now, or upper middle class, or upper middle class, or upper class, their forefathers, their generations before them struggled. But you can also come from middle class or upper middle class and still be a good person. So they keep talking about everything. I struggled back then. Something just doesn't jive right to me. And I agree with your point about the rural part of the country. Like, they're going to something that barely exists anymore.
Right. The response to that should be, it's like, yes, of course, Joni Ernst, you were born at a time when you could work hard and lift yourself out of poverty. But thanks to 30 years of trickle-down economics, that's no longer the case in America.
Yeah.
We now have less economic mobility than Europe. So fantastic, your policies have fucked over for former you.
Yeah.
And I used to put bread bags on my feet. When this gig is done, I'm going to be a lobbyist. I'm going to buy the bread company.
That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, there you go.
I would imagine. I hope somebody puts they can put a bread bag over her head. How about that?
Oh, now
I was waiting for someone to make a joke about that. I don't condone that. That's not folksy.
Nor do I.
But there's one more flashback to a previous
Maybe if we get
rebuttal.
some information out of her that saves lives, it's worth it. We torture some folks. She's a folk. We torture some folks.
There you go.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let's do a little flashback to, I believe this is 2012. I could be wrong, but here is Marco Rubio.
The world is a better place when America is the strongest nation on earth. But we can't remain powerful if we don't have an economy that can afford it. In the short time that I've been here in Washington, nothing has frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big business.
So awkward. But I like that at least
awkward.
there they tried to make it seem like he was giving an address from the Oval Office. Like they tried to give it that vibe with open window.
And he gave you the gestures.
The energy.
That means so much because then, John,
It's just
who coaches these guys?
I don't know.
But that's what I mean about the awkwardness of standing in a room alone and the fakeness of it. Because if he was someone that was within himself telling the truth, you would be able to pause for a drink and it not be awkward. But they put themselves in such an odd situation with one camera and a fake background and just something that's so rehearsed and prepared that taking a pause for a drink suddenly seems ludicrous, which is why that thing went viral.
You know, I had a great idea listening to you, which I had to throw away, and I'll explain why. Which was, wouldn't it be great, since you're absolutely right, wouldn't it be great if what they did for response to the stadium, they sat with some ordinary people who had questions about what they heard the president say, and then they said, Senator, could you explain that to me? The problem is none of them could explain anything. But in an ideal world, that would be the perfect rebuttal. Human, normal, interactive. Yeah, you have a little sip of water as you're answering the question.
Or just one other thought on that. I mean, imagine if they literally just picked someone who could sit there, watch what happened, and say, you know what, I wrote down a couple things. And I know some of these ideas are obviously somewhat pre-prepared, but let me just actually respond.
Yeah.
Not give bread baskets.
Like we did.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, they should follow us. You know what I mean? Like, it would be so much more human, and that's what they're all missing there.
Yeah, why not get, McConnell, Boehner, and Ted Cruz to sit down at a table and have them just talk a little bit about what they heard. Like,
because he's the intellect.
Paul Ryan or whatever. Like, that would be a great opportunity for them to showcase their
Over a
upcoming
beer,
stars.
because if you have a beer,
Exactly.
that shows you're a human.
It's folksy, exactly. So anyway, I love that. Marco Rubio, going to be running for president, right? Raised his whole life to think that you need to be hungry for it. He also is thirsty. So I think he has a good shot. Anyway, we have to take our first break. When we come back, we have Steve Ducey, his ideas of what's fair in terms of college access. We have a potential surprise visitor to the House of Representatives. And let's see, Mike Huckabee and what he thinks about the likelihood the Supreme Court will make gay marriage legal across the country. We'll be back in just a few.
Nothing has frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big business.
first hour of the Young Turks. It's me, Dave, Jimmy, and RJ responding to the State of the Union. We also have some other news coming up very soon. Before we get back to the news, though, I did want to read one of the hashtag TYT lives we got. We were talking about why it is that in the GOP rebuttal to the State of the Union, it's always one person alone, no applause or anything like that. And I love what Jeff Waldorf said. Maybe the GOP rebuttal takes place in an empty room to avoid the inevitable laughter. I think it's a great point. They bring staffers in, but it doesn't work well for them, I guess. And then also I do want to recognize two of the members. Member number 743, Laura Gerritsen, and member number 1722, Stephen Allison. Thank you very much for supporting us in the way you did.
By the way, we should note that the Democrats, once there's a Republican in office, the Democrats will do it the same way too. So this isn't about party. This is just how it's done, and they all do it, and they're all toned down. So.
We need to do some research. Look back at the ones under Bush.
Some bad ones.
Some bad ones.
Oh yeah. Who was that guy from Washington we were talking about last night? A governor of Washington or something?
I don't think we ever found out then either. Okay, well then maybe perhaps if Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio becomes president, they can fill the room with a few people. Okay, let's get back to the news. We got a few more stories for you. President Obama thinks that we can do more to help out young Americans, specifically by making 2 years of community college free for anyone who works hard, gets the grades, and does it. But his view of what's fair is very different than Fox News. So just the quick details of the plan before we give you their reaction. The $60 billion proposal would provide grants to pay 75% of the average cost of community college for 2 years, and participating states would be required to cover the rest. Now, this is a big proposal because right now you do have to pay for community college in most cases, although some states have their own programs. But understand that, of course, you can get free elementary school education, free high school across the country. So is it so crazy that we'd extend it just 2 years? According to Fox's Steve Ducey, yeah, it's just that crazy. Listen to him here.
Here's the thing that really bothers me about this.
What?
I made my final 2 college tuition payments about 2 weeks ago.
We're speaking like from the heart of dad and moms out there feeling the same way. Wait a second, now we're paying for more college tuition for somebody else to the tune of $60 billion.
What a great deal, but who's going to pay for that?
But it's only, we're talking about, Steve, your family did not go choose junior college. So you would
Had it been free, Brian, they might have.
Right.
But look, the bill's going to end up on somebody's plate, and it's the American people. Right. You just got a new kid, and you're paying for his college tuition. How do you feel about that?
Oh, by the way, I just don't understand the word free. Nothing is free.
Then you weren't watching last night because he had all sorts of free stuff.
Nothing is free. That's why he supports no government spending whatsoever.
Well, first of all, she got the numbers wrong. $60 billion is the amount that we pay for all tuition in this country. It is not the amount we pay for community college tuition, which, by the way, averages about $7,500 a year. So it's a $15,000 per student proposal. It's not exactly wild in the streets, number one. Number two, just a quick observation. It is convenient that Steve Ducey has a last name that actually sounds like the word for what he is. Don't you just want to say, what a Ducey? Doesn't he sound like a Ducey?
That's how he got the gig.
That's how he got the gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to ease his mind because he's really bothered by this. He just finished paying for his tuition. Steve Ducey, did you go to a community college? No? Then you would have still had to pay for it anyway. It's not taking care of all college tuition. You probably went to some expensive private college, although much of it didn't sink in. You still would have had to pay for your tuition. People who go to expensive colleges will still have to pay for their tuition. And nothing in that area is changing.
0.1% in this country that can afford to pay off their college loan is by getting a job being a moron on Fox.
Yeah.
That's about the only job that will pay for it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ignore Steve Ducey for a moment, but I am curious. I'm not an economist. So when they say,
you are an economist.
But I am an economist. When they say free, who actually is paying for it? I really mean this question. I mean this question genuinely.
Well, Barack Obama says that the tax increases in his recent tax proposal, part of what that revenue would raise would be to pay off this. So it would be people with capital gains, corporations, things like that.
So it's this new tax thing, this capital gains thing that he just introduced.
Yes.
A couple days ago. Correct.
The idea is, well, first of all, I think it's a mistake to look at it as a cost, in a sense, because investing in our country, which is what we're doing here, pays for itself, right? So an educated electorate, workforce, that's how Finland turned around their whole economy, just by educating their people.
Yeah.
So education is something we should be trying to increase in America and get rid of the barriers to education, as opposed to what they think on Fox and Friends and Friends and Friends, is that we should somehow keep the barrier up. It pisses me. It should be hard to get an education. It's like everything backward you want about a society, they're in favor of. Let's make it hard for education. Let's make it expensive. Let's put a barrier between you and getting a college education, which is ridiculous. But I love when he says, well, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay? Which is a question they never ask when we're going to drop a bomb on ISIS, or we're going to go fight Putin, or go drop a bomb in Syria, or Guantanamo. They never go, who pays for that? You know how much money it costs to keep Guantanamo open? I want to know who pays for that. They never ask that question. The only time they ask the question, who's going to pay for this, is when it's something that's actually going to help someone in America. That's the only time it pisses them off. Someone might be getting help from the government, and that's morally wrong to them.
I love what you said about it being an investment, by the way, because when you don't have free community college and you have to take out loans, let's say hypothetically you're like many Americans who have to pay $300, $400, $500 a month in student loan payments to Sally Mae. It goes off to some bank or whatever. You know what you're not doing with the $500? You're not buying a new car or clothing or entertainment or services in your area. All of that money is being drained out
where people are working, keeping their jobs because you're going to the restaurant.
Yes, it is literally an investment in every locale around the country. She was saying too, like, oh, congratulations! Now, if you have a new kid, you're gonna have to pay for their college. Does she have any idea how expensive college has become? They have to pay for it now. This is to provide an alternative for people who can't afford to pay $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 per year in tuition. And most importantly, the idea that because he had to pay for his tuition, you shouldn't have an option to go to 2 years of community college. That is the most un-American thing Steve Ducey has perhaps ever said. When we were proposing Social Security, the politicians at the time didn't say, well, my grandma had to scrimp and save to eat. She didn't have cooking oil and things like that.
When it was 1790, it was like, wait a minute, I just finished my indentured servitude. You're going to let these people go without indentured servitude? I did 7 years, man.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, all of these people had to be slaves. Why should people be free in the future? That is not American. The exact opposite. We want things to be better than they were for us. If we didn't have insurance or our parents didn't have insurance, we want our kids to have insurance.
Can I
another country to broadcast?
Can I bring one more of these?
He's going to get a raise based off of that.
He's a Ducey.
Can I just bring one more of these things back on? Because when I first saw that, my first thought is I'm calling bullshit. Now, I could be wrong. Steve Ducey is 58 years old. Probably graduated high school normal in about 1974. He went to the University of Kansas. He was born in Iowa, but he's from Kansas. So probably in-state tuition. Now in 2014, the estimated 1 year is $9,500 in 2014. 1974 to 78, probably in 4 years he was at Kansas. Do you really think he just paid off whatever minor amount of money he owed to the University of Kansas tuition that he took out loans for, or whatever it could have been, when he's been working at Fox News forever? Maybe he went to law school. It doesn't show it to me here.
Maybe there's one way it's possible, which is if he tried to stiff the law. And they caught up with him because it's that guy on TV. We've been chasing him for 45 years. Now, in that case,
maybe he doesn't get paid as well by Fox as we would.
There is one other way if it took him 20 years to graduate, which is possible.
There you go. Because he went to the University of Kansas.
Yes,
that's where he went. University of Kansas in Lawrence, and he got his journalism degree, a BS in journalism, ironically.
So he's been majoring that ever since, actually.
Yeah. And he was the first on-air DJ for KJHK Radio, the student-operated radio station at 90.7 FM in Lawrence, Kansas. I have a radio show at 90.7 FM Los Angeles, KPFK. So there's a lot of we're a lot alike, Steve Ducey and I.
Nice plug.
Yeah,
it's so subtle, slick.
Just very frustrating. Like there's no such thing as over here.
I should put the Jimmy Dore. People don't even know I have a Jimmy Dore show on the Young Turks Network, and they don't know I have my own podcast, Jimmy Dore Show. Every time, I didn't know.
A book, by the way.
I have a book. I have lots of things. Go to Jimmy Dore Comedy Show.
But they know I have the 0 hour.
The 0 hour.
And they know it's at thisisthezerohour.com. So,
okay.
That reminds me of a great episode of the Rubin Report we had this morning. really powerful.
I posted about that on my Pinterest.
That's funny. I was watching.
That was a bit.
No, I don't actually have Pinterest.
I was watching you talking from your home studio, and just a big fan of it.
Oh, thanks.
Your home studio.
Thank you. And finally, by the way, the idea there, nothing is free. Who is that? I always mix up his name. Is that Kilmeade?
Kilmeade,
Yeah,
Brian
Kilmeade.
Kilmeade,
Yeah.
I know, 'cause
The
it says it
billions
right
that we
here.
give to the most profitable energy companies in the world in subsidies that they don't need, that's not free either.
Can I just say this
He's
is one
okay
of the
with that.
scariest things we've ever done on TYT, this giant head.
I can't stop looking at it,
Look
actually.
that thing. No, the wide shot. On the wide shot, look at that. It's just scary.
It's like the Wizard of Oz.
That
You know?
is very-
Yeah, big floating head.
And by the way, those Hellfire missiles, they're not free either.
No,
Did you
cruise
know that?
missiles can cost well over $1 million
I
each.
know.
Not free.
Each Hellfire missile launch costs $250,000. Where do you get that money?
Fine with that. Okay, let's mix up slightly more serious here. One of the things Barack Obama talked about in his State of the Union is the ongoing negotiations with Iran to try to forestall their advancement in terms of nuclear energy and possibly the development of nuclear weapons. He needs to do those negotiations, and he wants to make sure that Congress doesn't make his job more difficult by passing another round of sanctions against Iran. Specifically, he said, "There are no guarantees that negotiations will succeed, and I keep all options on the table to prevent a nuclear Iran. But new sanctions passed by this Congress at this moment in time will all but guarantee that diplomacy fails, alienating America from its allies and ensuring that Iran starts up its nuclear program again. It doesn't make sense. That is why I will veto any new sanctions bill that threatens to undo this progress. The American people expect us to only go to war as a last resort, and I intend to stay true to that wisdom." Is one of the few things he specifically called out that he would veto as president. Not 24 hours after saying that, John Boehner decided to fan the flames of controversy just a little bit and announces he would attempt to bring the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to address Congress about exactly those things. New sanctions and any steps that they can take against Iran. Here's a clip of John Boehner.
Another priority is protecting the United States and our allies overseas. That's why I've invited Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to address a joint session of Congress on the grave threats of radical Islam and the threat that Iran poses to not only the Middle East, but frankly to the world. America and Israel have always stood together. We have a shared cause. We have common ideals. And now we must rise to that moment once again.
The White House has put out a statement saying that they were not approached by John Boehner about that, but that also Israel has not communicated with the White House. So it is possible that it will happen. We have a little bit more from Boehner in just a minute, but your initial reaction, is this a constructive way to go forward in terms of Iran's nuclear problem?
Well, first of all, do you remember the days when Republicans held the White House and they said interference in foreign policy was treason? So all of a sudden, it's not treason anymore. It's what they do. And number two, Benjamin Netanyahu is the guy who shows up when he's not invited. I mean, if you remember what happened in the Charlie Hebdo march, the Je suis Charlie march in Paris, the French government specifically didn't want him to come because they didn't want to inflame tensions, and they didn't invite Mahmoud Abbas from the Palestinian Authority, but he said he was coming anyway. And so they said, well, then we got to make sure, all at the last minute. I mean, you'd think that if he's smart, and I hope he is smart about it, that he will decline the invitation, because the Republicans weren't smart. Remember how they used to say, our divisions end at the nation's shoreline?
Yes.
Remember that line that they used to do?
Well, that's why they want to bring him here.
Oh,
we can still have the divisions then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but it just seems to me outrageous.
Yeah.
So I agree with the basic premise of what you're saying. The Hebdo thing to me is different because he was trying to stand up because 4 Jewish people were shot, and he was trying to stand up as the leader of the nation state of the Jewish people. So I think that's fine. I understand that Paris didn't want him to go, and then they invited Abbas, which is ironic because if anyone in the West Bank had made those cartoons, Abbas probably would have had them killed. But that's a whole other topic. In terms of this, I think this is a pretty slick move by Boehner because really, Boehner wants sanctions, but really he can just now blame whatever happens on Netanyahu. So if anything, Netanyahu's coming off looking pretty stupid here because Boehner.
Well, Netanyahu hasn't yet done anything.
Assuming he comes, and he's done this twice before, and other leaders come to Congress, and they don't. By the way, I don't think they have to ask the White House if they're going to address.
No, that's what I said.
Address Congress.
It's not required.
So I think this is a pretty slick political move by Boehner. It's like, we want the sanctions, but we're going to sort of make it seem like Netanyahu is making us do it. So
You know, you made a great point about the hypocrisy of the people coming to Paris, and like Abbas would be against. It's almost all of like wasn't the leader of Qatar there also? Saudi Arabia wanted it on it. They're lashing bloggers. For Christ's sake. Russia, Putin with Pussy Riot put him in fucking jail because they offended religious sensibilities. So, and the only
French aren't too great,
and the French are bad also. The only country that actually has First Amendment free speech protections didn't show up.
Well, we did send the undersecretary of the undersecretary of the undersecretary.
Look, to be fair, then we sent James Taylor.
Yeah, that's true.
Which write your own joke, because Ed McMahon used to.
Wow, Jim, you just said that we have First Amendment rights here. That's the least cynical thing I've ever seen out of you.
Well, we have it in our
For now,
we have them. Although the New York Police Department has already arrested 6 people for writing shit against the police on Facebook. So we don't really have any rights anymore. We have, well, first of all, that government can right now, because of terrorism, they can put you in jail without a charge indefinitely forever. So we're back before the age of the Magna Carta, right? That's the kind of view of liberty we're living on, because they repealed habeas corpus, right? And I talk about this in the book.
There you go. And on the podcast, probably. Let's jump to the second clip of Boehner. Here he's going to talk about whether or not he thinks that this is unproductive and unnecessarily antagonistic towards the president.
I did not consult with the White House. The Congress can make this decision on its own. I don't believe I'm poking anyone in the eye. There is a serious threat that exists in the world. And the president last night kind of papered over it. And the fact is that there needs to be a more serious conversation in America about how serious the threat is from radical Islamic jihadists and the threat posed by Iran.
I thought he was going to say the threat that we're facing is that from UV rays that makes free radicals. Right? They keep creating these free radicals. That's going to cause skin cancer. I'm trying to tell him. Go ahead.
He's halfway there. I don't know if Netanyahu will come. As you said, he has before. I personally think that he has far more to gain from simply dealing directly with Obama and the White House. I think that they desperately want Iran to not have nuclear weapons, and I think that at this point, it is far less likely that Iran ends up with an active nuclear program as a result of diplomacy than Israel and the United States invading Iran. I mean, is that really what we're talking about at this point? But that is really what Boehner is talking about, by the way. Boehner does not believe that diplomacy is the solution. He says we need to have a serious conversation. He's not going to specifically say it, but what he means there is that after 13 years of war in Afghanistan, after almost that many years of war in Iraq, we're in Syria now as well, we're back in Iraq, we need to invade Iran. That is what he said. At the very least, a significant military strike against their nuclear capabilities. Well, that is what Boehner is saying.
I don't know that it's exactly what he's saying, because he's saying all options should be on. Actually, what Obama said was all options should be on the table. So I don't know that.
But he's trying to undercut diplomacy.
Well, no, I don't know that that's true, because what he's saying is he wants more sanctions. Now, the sanctions could blow up the whole negotiations for sure. But sanctions in and of themselves are what got Iran here in the first place. So by ratcheting up more sanctions, you don't automatically. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to war.
Well, but if sanctions also are what got them to the negotiating table, and they're at the negotiating table right now, wouldn't we give it a little bit of time?
Sanctions,
for
sure. Sanctions, I think sanctions would go. I mean, I think anytime you have the president of the United States negotiating with a foreign and considered an enemy country, granted, but that's
Thank you.
bohemian. Does that count? I was born in a storefront.
It's something. It's something.
What was the store?
It was a knitting shop.
Nice.
Steve could, of course, jump in if he wants to mix things up a little bit racially. We'll see. Maybe we can get him to comment a little bit later on. But anyway, as I alluded to, lots to talk about for the State of the Union, so why don't we jump right into that? The president covered many topics in his State of the Union. I'm sure we'll comment on those, but I'm also interested in what did not get covered, or at least did not get covered as much as it should have in the big speech last night. There were several topics that certainly seemed
hanging out, saving money on books. Anyone going to the bookstore? Can I go with?
Welcome back to the Young Turks. A few TYT lives for you. Amanda Thompson had a pretty funny one. Are we allowed to fart near a cop? I fear that they'll get someone shot or arrested. I fear that'll get someone shot or arrested. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't fart near anyone. How about that?
I like this one. No More Donate says, why am I not surprised that pro-establishment Rubin Report doesn't advise using your First Amendment rights versus cops? I'm pretty sure that is not what I said at all. And then someone, Africoca, said, am I the only one seeing the passenger pushing the door while the police officer is pushing back? So I didn't see that in what we just watched. But if that is the case, again, that changes it. And that goes to how there's so many things happening at once in these situations that it's hard, even when you have video that you're looking at, it's sometimes hard to decipher what the truth is.
It's so frustrating with these stories because none of them are clear cut. Like, there's no evidence that's so clear that you're like, yeah, there was definitely wrongdoing by the police officials, right? The only time that happened was with the Eric Garner case, and we still didn't get a grand jury indictment, which is frustrating. Dubmaster C says, I like to flip off cops in my town. They can't do shit, but they can harass the hell out of you. The best protection is a camera. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah. By the way, if we have any lawyers that are watching right now and they want to answer our question, I will do the research after about what you're allowed to say with cops. I'm pretty sure that Steve is right, or you're right about that. You can't threaten a cop, obviously, but you could probably tell a cop to go fuck themselves or whatever else you want to say. But if anyone knows for a fact, I will, if you do the hashtag on the TYT Live, I'll retweet it so that we know what we're talking about.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to jails. Shelby County Jail in Ohio is offering its inmates something unique in the commissary. If you are able to afford it, you can actually buy e-cigarettes from the commissary. So this was actually done in an effort to calm some of the inmates down. Some of them have been smoking for decades, and as a result, they become really irritable when they don't get their nicotine fix. And so the officials there thought, hey, you know what? Why don't we provide it if they can pay for it, and then they can go ahead and smoke it. Now, what's fascinating about this is that it's specially made for the jail, so a lot of people are concerned that e-cigarettes can be used as weapons behind bars, but this crossbar, that's the brand, is basically made in such a way that it could never be used as a weapon.
Right.
I find kind of hard to believe, because I think you can use anything as a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, that looks like you could pretty much figure out how to use, all right, yeah. I'll accept their theory.
So let me give you some more information. According to the Shelby County Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy, he says it has reduced issues within the jail, fighting contraband coming into the jail, such as regular cigarettes. All of those issues have been kind of solved since this has become more available for the inmates. And also, it's bringing in money for the jail. A lot of people were concerned that this was actually going to cost the county money, but no, it's brought in $17,000 in 2014 alone.
Right. So, all right. So, removing the health benefits that people shouldn't smoke, right? And you'd prefer that the inmates not smoke, I suppose, for their own health, and then that's going to keep costs down of doctors and treatments and things of that nature. But forgetting that part of it, I see no problem with this. What's the big deal? You're actually also going to cut down on, the illegal trading and smuggling things in, hopefully. So this seems only good, although again, you'd rather these people not smoke, but also their ability to smoke is exercising a little bit of power over their own bodies, and they don't have a lot of power. Obviously, when you're in jail, you don't have a lot of power that you can exercise. So if they need that cigarette during the day, I don't see a problem.
And the lack of power is what appeals to those who are against this type of treatment, right? So we have a very punitive system, and the whole thought process is, well, when you're behind bars, who cares if you need your nicotine fix? Like, you should suffer. That's part of being an inmate. But if you got to do a cost-benefit analysis, right? So if these people are so irritable that it's leading to them being violent behind bars, or if it's leading to, illegal contraband or illegal trade within the prisons or the jails, then that's a bigger issue, right? I'm much more concerned about creating a safe environment for people to do their time than to create a system that's so punitive that people are like literally killing each other.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that nicotine is highly, highly addictive.
Yeah.
So taking someone that's a smoker, throwing them in jail, and just not giving them access, there's medical reasons why they should still have access. Yes, you can try to wean them off, put them on Chantix or whatever else there is that'll get them off, give them the gum, the nicotine gum, whatever it is. But that would be the equivalent of taking... like I say, it's the exact equivalent, but if you took a heroin addict and put them in jail, you would have to put them on methadone or something, otherwise they would go crazy, harm themselves or harm other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the only other concern that people have is that, when you smoke from e-cigarettes, it's not as harmless as people think. So, of course, regardless of what you think, it does cause harm to you. It's not harmless when you smoke it yourself. But the jury is still out about whether or not it's harmful to people that are around you, so the secondhand smoke. And so, there have been some studies on this. Some studies say it is harmful, other studies say it isn't harmful, and it's a relatively new product, so studies are continuing to happen. But, overall, I am in favor of this, and if they need to keep studying it, sure. If they realize that this is actually leading to a safer environment behind bars, then that's the best possible thing they can come out.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that, to your point earlier, that the people that are against this aren't going to be against it because of the secondhand smoke to the other inmates.
Right.
It's because they don't want to give the prisoners any degree of power or satisfaction or freedom or anything like that.
Absolutely. All right. This is an interesting story. There is a new service available for those who are interested in pretending as though they have a significant other. It's an app known as Invisible Girlfriend, and two guys by the name of Matthew Homan and Kyle Tabor created it. Now, the way that it works is you fork over $25, an invisible girlfriend or boyfriend, it doesn't have to be a girlfriend, does all the grunt work for you, populating your phone with text messages and photos to establish the 100% real relationship that you're totally in right now. Now, that's Daily Dot's words on this. Every user actually gets to create every user gets 10 free text messages with his or her fake boo upon sign up. If you want more than that, and it will probably require more than that to fool everyone, including yourself, into thinking you're in love, you will have to pay the $25 monthly fee. The paid versions of the service give you 100 text messages, 10 voicemails, and 1 handwritten postcard from your invisible girlfriend or boyfriend. So when I was reading about this, I was thinking, wow, that's really sad. Like, why would people do this? Don't lie to yourself. Like, why would you lie to people and tell them that you're in a relationship when you're not? Yeah. Especially when you want to be in a relationship. The best way to get into a relationship is to tell people that you're single and you're ready to mingle, right? Yeah. But in this case, you're like, no, I'm totally taken. Well, then you're totally shutting off possibilities. But there are good uses for this, right? So I'm going to let you jump in and then I'll tell you.
Yeah, well, one good use first, before we get to the funny stuff. I mean, one good use, let's say you were in a country where being gay was illegal, yes, or you were in the South where maybe being gay isn't as accepted. Well, you could fake a heterosexual relationship while actually being in a gay relationship. And then you could, look, that would just open a Pandora's box of living a double life and all kinds of terrible stuff. But I could see certain circumstances, especially in places where certain types of relationships aren't allowed. I could see a legitimacy for it. The thing that I think is particularly interesting is that, so you get the social media component, right? So you're going to get Facebook posts and things like that. Okay, so that's fine. That's for the public. When you get the text messages and the handwritten note and the voicemail,
do you go around showing
right,
people?
That's the interesting part, because then it's like you're really pushing the lie. It's one thing to do the passive lie, where it's like, oh, someone's just posting on my Facebook page and other people can see it, that kind of thing. But then there's a very active lie of being like, Ma, look at my phone. I got to listen to this voicemail I got from this person that I'm dating with. Yeah.
But, I mean, we do live in the age of oversharing, and some people will do, I've done this once before, like you'll do a screenshot of a text message exchange that's like particularly funny or something, and then you'll post it on social media. Like, people do things like that. So maybe they'll find clever ways to do it, but yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of strange that not only are you paying a service to send you these fake messages, then you have to do the legwork of going around and showing people like, see, I have a boyfriend. Yeah. It's kind of strange. Now, here's some other good uses for it if you have these issues. So let's say you are single and you're really hyper-focused on your career or your education and you just don't really want to waste any of your time in a relationship. Not that relationships are a waste of time, but nonetheless. You can now kind of get family members off your back and be like, yeah, I got a significant other. But here's the issue with family members. They're going to want to meet your significant other.
Right. How long can you get this charade going? Do you get to pick where I'm in a long distance. He lives in Kuala Lumpur. You know what I mean? Like, how far does this person live? Like, right, that's the thing. Eventually, this thing will crumble around you. As most lies usually do, eventually, it's like when you flush the toilet, it's swirling, and eventually it's going to just go down. Like, that's pretty much what's going to be happening here. But when we did this story on my show today, and I was thinking, like, doesn't it show how exhausting social media has become?
Yes.
Sort of. Like, that you could in the old days, you could either be in a relationship or not, or lie about it. Now, if you're going to lie about it, you have to actually pay someone to give you the proof of the lie. It's just like, it's a lot that people are putting out there on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of pressure to overshare. A lot of people do overshare. It's a huge part of our lives today. It's interesting.
How much are you paying Christian per month to pretend to be your boyfriend, by the way?
Not much.
Not much?
Not
okay.
much. All right.
This sounds like it's a good opportunity for them to open up and expand it. Even if there's a person just acts like, there's an actual person who acts like they're your significant other, boyfriend or girlfriend, in the situation where, hey, if you give $100 a month, there'll be an actual person that knows things you're saying, and I'll respond and act like your significant other. And then even, it's going to advance further. And even for $200 a month, I'll send you a couple of pictures. Like there's a girl, like there's a guy who's like, yeah, my girlfriend probably send me a couple of nudies, and then that starts happening. This could advance to a point where somebody can really make some money.
Right. It might turn into a porn service.
Right, that's what I was going to say. For $300 a month, they'll sleep with you, and then it's basically a prostitution. So, like, it all comes around.
Well, I like expansion.
You have to scale these things out. You know what I mean? These apps have to be profitable.
Yeah.
What happens after you sleep with them? What's next? Then you got to fake the marriage, fake the pictures.
That sounds disastrous.
And then you want to get out of the fake marriage, so you have to fake a funeral.
That's a good point. That's usually the best way to get out of a marriage.
That's the one.
By the way, there is one other good purpose for it. So for those who are maybe a little socially awkward and they want a little training on how to be in a relationship, this could actually be a good service for them, because when you're getting these text messages, they're from real people, right? They're not from a robot or something. Like, a real person actually text messages you, so it might be good at easing yourself into interacting with, a significant other in the future. I don't know. That's another possibility.
You're trying. I mean, you're trying to bring it home into something that's decent and whatever, but...
Listen, not all of us are skilled in romance. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
All right. I'm not skilled in romance either. All right. A university in Canada is getting some heat after they put out an ad for their institution, and it had some salacious elements that people were not too pleased with. Take a look.
À l'université de Moncton, notre langue, c'est une fierté, une force. C'est la langue du progrès, des affaires, des autres affaires. C'est la langue de l'ambition, de la découverte. Celle avec laquelle on réplique, on s'affirme. Notre langue, ici, c'est le français. Et ici, c'est votre université.
I think that's a great ad.
That made me want to go back to college.
I don't even speak French, but I think it is a great ad. Yeah, that's a great ad because most of my memories of college, I learned some stuff. I was a political science major. I think I've somehow applied that to my adult life.
Yeah.
But most of my memories of college are those things.
Yeah, the sporting events, not for me, but for a lot of people, sporting events. Making out in the library. Didn't everyone do that? But just the fun social elements of college.
Yeah.
And they're appealing to young people that want to experience that. So there's nothing wrong with it. But a lot of the professors are concerned because they think that it belittles the institution, makes it seem as though it's nothing but a party school and people are really there to learn. But look, here's the truth. People are there to learn, there's no question. But they're also there to grow. They're also there to meet people. They're also there to have a good time. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. It's about learning and it's about having a good time and it's about figuring out who you are. That's what the college experience hopefully does. It prepares you to enter the real world. And guess what? All of those things, making out in the library and having a good time with your boyfriend or girlfriend and going to the beach, that's all the experiences that will then lead you into your adult life. That doesn't mean you're not going to study or, look, you teach a class. I came and talked to your class. I could tell those kids were not there just to learn.
Right.
They were totally cool and they dug what we were talking about. But then they go out at night and they have beers and have some fun.
A good time.
And that's the point of college. I think it's pretty great.
I love it. One professor says it's the way it's like selling the university, like it's a beer product. And one student says that there's nothing wrong with it, and it's not that way that you will recruit. Oh, I'm sorry. This student actually doesn't like this. University okay, so this is actually another administrator. And it's not that way that you will recruit serious students and people who really want to learn and have good diplomas. I know that she's probably French, which is why that grammar was atrocious, but everything's going to be fine. There's room for both. There's room to be social. There's room to have fun. There's room to educate yourself. I think it makes you a well-rounded person.
Yeah. By the way, I had a friend a guy that was in my group of friends who I wasn't particularly friends with, but he studied constantly, all 4 years. All he wanted to do was study. We couldn't get the guy to drink a beer or do anything. He was sort of like the nerd of our group or whatever. We always gave him shit for it. And I've lost touch with him, but I have mutual friends now. And I hear every now and again, he's married, his kids, doesn't do anything, has no fun. He didn't get the experience. For whatever reason, he didn't get that full experience, and it clearly translated to his life. So,
sorry to interrupt you, that was one of my biggest regrets when I was in college. I was always in a monogamous, serious relationship. All I wanted to do was study. I wanted to finish my education as quickly as possible so I can start working. And I didn't go to the parties, and I didn't get crazy or wild or socialize. I had some friends, but it was more of a superficial friendship where it's we communicate because we go to the same school. I don't know whether or not we're going to keep communicating after we graduate.
Right.
And that's not good. You meet some really interesting people in college, and you should put yourself in social situations. And that's one of the greatest advantages of being in college, networking.
Of course, and by the way, if you don't get those things out in college, you're going to get them out eventually.
Yeah.
So you know what? You could try to lead the path, that normal path, and then one day you're 40 with kids and you realize, wow, I never did drugs, I never drank, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm not putting that much importance on drugs, really. But whatever it is, I didn't get that fun, that unrelenting craziness out of me, and then you end up doing stuff that when you're 40 that you should have done when you're 20. So there's a lot of reasons that this is totally okay.
Yeah, I started going crazy when I was 27.
And you see what happened to you.
I know.
You see, people.
All right, let's take one more quick break. When we come back, a female veteran gets bad treatment from another veteran. I'll tell you why. and also the man who paints with his penis.
Yeah, we got to do that.
No! Really? I did one as many things as me? Wow! That was good.
Welcome back to the Young Turks here at TYT Live for you. Lots of opinionated people when it comes to the last story we did about that college ad. Carissa says they aren't trying to get more professors, they're trying to get young adult students, so yeah, it makes sense. Emma kind of disagrees with us. She says some of us get our fun from learning on its own. Nerd! No, I'm just kidding. No, I did too. Like, I really enjoyed learning. But I missed out on some stuff. But Ken Cotton says, don't worry about that. Don't self-hate, Anna. You didn't get pregnant, an STD, or drop out either. True. And also, Naventure says, have to agree, everything is being sold like a beer commercial. Nothing is sacred.
Right. It is kind of hilarious to me that you think, oh, you didn't get it out appropriately in college because you're the most career-oriented, like, full person that I know. Thanks. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, really, like, the idea that you would have some feeling like you should have done it. Like, I guess we all have those things. I should have done this, should have done that.
Yeah.
But, you know.
So, you know what? I want to elaborate on that more in the post-game show. Yeah. Don't let me forget.
Let me throw in. All right, so that's what we'll do in the post-game. I want to just throw in one more. Dr. Sinister said, you got to get that craziness out of you. Some people go to war. Some people do mushrooms. I did mushrooms a lot in college. So
did you?
Yeah. I was a shroom head. No, I don't know. I did it maybe. I one time did try to count. And over 3 years, I did it 13 times. So I think that's pretty.
Wow!
Bartman gave me the thumbs up over there.
Can we talk about that in the post-game show?
Sure.
Okay, mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Okay, got it. Boom.
Rooms.
All right. What do you mean? You're afraid to do mushrooms. All right. Anyway, maybe Bart will jump in on the post-game show. All right, guys.
Okay.
Mary Claire, hold on. What is going on? Okay. Mary Claire Kane parked in an interesting spot that got her into a little bit of trouble. Now, she is actually a veteran, okay? She served in Kuwait, and she was a reserved... I don't know why I messed up the story. I'm trying to figure out how to present it.
Did you have a good enough time in college? You were just studying too much in college.
I think I had too much fun in college, and I can't get this
Now
right.
you're having too much pressure on yourself.
All right.
You can do this.
All right.
Anna Kasparian, ladies and gentlemen.
What is wrong with me? All right. A Wilmington, North Carolina woman parked her car in a section that is reserved for veterans only. Now, after she did that with her kids, she went into a grocery store and she came back and she noticed that there was a random note on her car, and the note said the following: "Maybe you can't read the sign you parked in front of. This space is reserved for those who fought for America, not you. Thanks, wounded vet." Okay. So, I was amused by this. But then, when I read into the story a little more, I was even more amused because it turns out that this woman with her children is actually a vet, okay? According to reports, she was a member of the flight crew for the F-117 Nighthawk in Kuwait. And when she saw that note, she was really upset because she realized that just because she's a woman with kids, this guy or woman, whoever it was, assumed that she had not served the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way,
it's absurd. Yeah, go ahead.
I get it. Like, I get the whole thing about respecting our veterans. I think we should, right? But, like, what's next? Are we going to have parking spots for doctors? Are we going to have parking spots for teachers that educate our youth?
Parking spots for handicapped people?
Like, but that makes sense because handicapped people might have a hard time getting into a store, right? Because they need to be as close as possible. But, like, if you are a wounded vet, then you can get a handicap placard and then you're fine. Like, why do we have to have parking spots like specifically reserved for wounded vets or vets in general?
Right, so this is for vets in general, not wounded vets, because as you said, a wounded vet, I'm sure, could get the handicapped parking permit. Yeah, I mean, this is just terrible. Obviously, there are plenty of women that serve in many levels. You know, I'm sure I've told you this before. I probably mentioned this on the Young Turks 1,000 times. B. Arthur from the Golden Girls was a truck driver in World War II. So women are out there and have been out there doing things for a long time. So I think maybe what this person was trying to get at was you're a woman, meaning you're not in the front lines of combat, which even that is changing now. But I'm not excusing it by any stretch. The guy's just being a dick, and you know, and should have had the foresight to think maybe this woman did serve. It is possible that a woman with kids actually served.
Yeah,
there are thousands and thousands of examples of that.
I don't even think he put that much thought into it. And by the way, I think I'm being unfair saying that it's a guy. I'm assuming it's a guy, which is unfair. It could have been a woman. But nonetheless, I think that this person just assumed, like, oh, here's a mother walking to a store. There's no way that she could have been in the military at all.
Yeah.
And look, this is a lesson that everyone can learn, and it can be applied to so many different things. We make judgments about people based on the way they look on a regular basis. I'm guilty of it. I do it on a regular basis, although I try to be cognizant of it, and I try not to judge people by the way they look. But try to be better about it, I guess. You know, don't assume that just because someone's small, they're not strong. Don't assume that if someone's overweight, that they're overweight because they can't stop eating. They might have a genetic issue. Like, there's so many different stories and so many different reasons for why people are the way they are or why they do the things that they do. So try to be a little more open-minded before casting judgment on others.
By the way, Jesus, can we throw the image up for one more time, or the quote about what it said on the note? Because I think there's another interesting part of this, which isn't just that the person said you shouldn't park here. It was, this space is reserved for those who fought in America, not you. Like, there's this specific, like, it gets angry unnecessarily, almost like, this is what it's for, you might have made a mistake. But, like, this real sort of indignant thing, it's just unnecessary.
So if this was signed by an actual wounded vet, I also don't like the sense of entitlement there. First of all, I respect you for what you did. I think that it's brave, I think it's courageous and selfless. But at the same time, just because you served in the military, it doesn't make you a god. It doesn't mean that people have to bow down to you. It doesn't mean that you're better than everyone else in the country.
Yeah.
That sense of entitlement bothers me.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's what we do. You know, whenever you see a veteran or even a current serving military serviceman in an airport and they're in their uniform, they get a lot of free stuff. Cool, that's fine with me. Well, we don't care. But we have this sense of make sure you thank them, and I think it's because people who aren't in or are thinking about it are like, I want the entire country to respect me. I think it's a recruiting tool to tell everyone.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, to tell everyone, A, you could be respected no matter how much of an asshole you might be in your regular life,
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna respect you no matter how much of a dick you actually are.
And remember, a lot of times the recruiters for the military target disadvantaged youth or troubled youth, and that could be a very appealing way or appealing tactic for some, right? Like to hear that you're going to be respected and that you're going to move forward in your life in the best possible way. I mean, I can see how that would work. Anyway, just don't judge other people based on the way they look. That's it. All right, guys, one last story for you. We'll make it quick. Excuse me. There is an Australian artist who likes to paint his work using his private parts. He refers to himself as Picasso, and we do have a video for this story, right? Let's take a quick look at that.
I've been to Mexico, Brazil, all over Europe, Germany, Holland, Spain, and everywhere really. Not really. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, you get the women that the husbands want to watch it or something, or the other way around, and.
Do you ever get propositions or commissions to do weird things?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, that's why I make most money is off the internet. Actually, yeah. Well, people just email me a photograph of their friends or something like that, or a friend, and they want to embarrass them. So I've got to sort of like paint it really rude with my penis in their mouth with an erect.
Thank you.
I'm so tired of these people.
The penis painters? You're tired of the penis painters?
Like the gimmicky, attention whores that exist, right? Like I remember doing a story on this woman. I don't remember her name, but she would put paint, like balls of paint, in her vagina, or eggs of paint in her vagina, and then she would hatch it onto a canvas, and the canvas was just splattered with random colors of paint, right? And it wasn't because she's an artist. She did it because she wanted attention. Like, who doesn't want to talk about the woman who puts, paint eggs in her vagina and then allows it to plop onto an empty canvas or blank canvas? I'm tired of you guys. That's it.
I can whistle the national anthem out of my butt. But I only do it. I'm not going to do it right now. Obviously, it's done.
You only
I do
do
it for
after
private.
Mexican food.
Yeah, after Mexican mostly private shows. You know what? I got to be honest with you. I think that it's actually kind of cool. The guy, that's pretty good art. What he did there. It's not just abstract Picasso shit. Like, he's doing portraits. Yeah. That was a pretty good piece of painting. What was he doing with? Did you notice though? He's doing it with his dick and he's drawing. But then he's also whacking it on his butt, doing some other strange things back there.
He likes to use more than one body part. Sometimes he will use his derriere for his art. And look, you are right. I mean,
nice.
You're right. I mean, he does manage to paint decent portraits of people or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, it's too gimmicky.
But to me, this is what an artist is. Like, you're doing your thing, and it doesn't matter. Like, obviously, some people are responding to it, but being an artist of any kind, a sculptor or a painter or a comic or an actor, whatever it is, using what you got to create something. Yeah. And that's what he's doing.
Isn't he concerned about chafing or anything?
Yeah, I would imagine the chafing, or what color has he probably turned his penis into?
God.
What does he use? Pastels? What's he using there?
Look, I don't know. And also, we obviously censored it because we can't show you uncensored junk on YouTube. But what I also wonder is, no, I don't wonder.
I love the whole operation. The ridiculous hat. Look at those boots. He's got the armbands. He looks like Owen Wilson, like a Owen Wilson after a bender, doesn't he? Look at him.
He must be well endowed, because no guy is going to do that if he has a small pecker, right?
Well, I heard the Sistine Chapel was painted via penis, but I guess I'm not sure.
All right, guys, we'll end on that note.
On that note,
Dave, thank you so much. Jank will be back on Friday for the panel. Dave is going to stick around for our awesome post-game show where we're going to talk about mushrooms and also crazy things I did when I was 27. That was last year. Anyway, stick around for that if you're a member. For everyone else, have an awesome night. You can keep tweeting to us using the hashtag TYT Live, and we'll see you tomorrow.